Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Jim Johnson, the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game and the Captain's Log solo role-playing game, both published by Modiphius Entertainment. And I am here back with another video related to some episodes of Star Trek. And I thought I'd take an opportunity here and just talk a bit about this stuff at length here. Excuse me while I adjust my adjust my set. There we go. That's better. So I recently did a video talking about how you can take an episode of Star Trek and like pull out the cool stuff or the interesting stuff out of that, and like how would you make that gameable? How would you make that a thing in Star Trek Adventures, or Captain's Log, I guess in this case, or either case, whichever the case may be. And so I thought I'd talk about season 2, the season finale of Star Trek Discovery. I mean, this is the first part of the two-part finale, Such Sweet Sorrow. This is part 1. I thought about doing both parts in the same episode, but there's actually a lot here, and I also want to keep this down to about half an hour, just to keep it efficient and not to get too gabby, because I know I tend to talk a lot. But yeah, so like how would you take some of the concepts of this episode and translate that into your Star Trek Adventures RPG with your friends, or maybe if I think to remember to get this far, I'll talk about maybe doing something like this in Captain's Log. Although doing this in Captain's Log would be pretty easy. You would just shift the focus a little bit, where this was truly an ensemble type of episode. You could very easily transition this into a Captain's Log story, or even a series of stories, each from a different perspective, and like focus on the story and see how the story changes when you shift perspectives from one character to another character. So anyway, yeah, let's just jump into it here, shall we? So season 2 of Discovery is my personal favorite of Discovery. There's so much going on. I loved Pike, I loved Una, I loved Spock. I loved all the supporting characters that they brought in, either from the first season into the second season, or the new characters that they brought in a very time-honored tradition of Deep Space Nine, especially because Deep Space Nine was like the king of supporting characters. Like, they had such a deep bench of supporting characters on Deep Space Nine, and you saw them recurring over and over again, and it really built a lot of life into that series, because it was like, oh, you're seeing these same faces popping up again and again and again. And that's probably one of the first tips I would recommend, is if you are able to run a long-term campaign with your group, and I'm specifically thinking of Star Trek Adventures here, as opposed to Captain's Log. If you're able to build a campaign of multiple episodes with a consistent group of player characters, and you start folding in all these supporting characters, and you have them recur every now and then, every couple episodes, every few episodes. If you're lucky enough to do multiple seasons of a story, keep having them pop up on a regular basis, changing and growing right there along with your player characters. But like, seeing those familiar faces pop up gives your players touchstones that they can remember and relate to and connect with, to the point where like your fan favorite, your player favorite characters can keep showing up, and that brings some joy. Or if there's like a really good non-player character who's kind of a nemesis or an arch enemy or something, or just like every time they meet a player character, they're always butting heads, and there's always like a challenge contest. Maybe it's an old academy buddy that is super competitive, or maybe it's an old flame that either wants to rekindle the thing or doesn't want to rekindle the thing, whatever. There's so much potential in supporting characters. Even if you're doing something like this for Captain's Log, as you get into Captain's Log and you're developing your character and you're telling story after story after story, don't be afraid to drop in some supporting characters, recurring characters that you can keep pulling into the story from time to time. Either develop a character sheet for them, maybe using the creation and play method, and just have them on deck, right? Have them available. Like, maybe there's stuff going on during the episode. Maybe you have an opportunity to spend threat for a complication, or maybe maybe one of the results on the table somewhere, I think, is maybe like some family member comes in, or some nemesis or some ally comes in to throw a wrench into the works. Grab that character sheet and have that recurring character come in and do a scene, or do a couple scenes or something, and have them, like, how does the story change? How does the story in progress change because that other character just showed up, right? We see that plenty of times on Deep Space Nine, when you think you're watching this episode pretty standard fare, and then all of a sudden Ducat shows up on the station, or the Cardassians show up, or a changeling shows up, or just something happens. You're like, oh boy, here we go. Actually, you know what? A great example would be Grand Nigga Zek. Like every time Zek shows up on DS9, you know you're in for a wacky Ferengi episode, and those are always just a lot of fun. So, those recurring characters, really take advantage of them when you can. So, courtesy of Trekcore, thank you, Trekcore. You have no idea I'm using your images, but I didn't want the video running behind me, so I'm shamelessly borrowing some of your screen caps just to kind of walk through the show here. Of course, Discovery's property of Paramount and CBS Studios. The screenshots are provided by Trekcore. Thank you so much for this wonderful, wonderful resource. So I'm just going to cycle through some of these images here. Boy, I tell you, this is a non-sequitur, but the production values on Discovery are so good, and they've gotten even better going into Strange New Worlds. And I don't know enough and I don't have the patience to sit through all the credits for every episode, but I have to wonder how many of the design people worked on Discovery are now working on Strange New Worlds. I wonder if they've spent the last 5 years getting even better at what they do, to where the pictures and the shots and the images and stuff are just even better. But Such Sweet Sorrow is such a good episode, a two-parter, and I mean, just if you want freaking eye candy to enjoy, man, it's beautiful. It is just a beautiful, beautiful show. I mean, even just this shot of the Discovery and the revamped Enterprise, it's just so pretty. And I'll tell you what, I've got an ancient 42-inch TV. I mean, this thing is 16 years old. It's not HD TV. It's not fancy, bells and whistles and all that stuff. It's kind of creaky, and but even as creaky as it is, this show pops on that screen, and it's just amazing. Anyway, so not sequitur, of course, but I was just appreciating the screenshot here. But anyway, back to the show. So we're just talking about the first parter, and I'll tell you what, this first parter, if you look at it in its totality, it's doing a few different things, right? Number one, well, actually, it's doing a lot of different things, but the things I noticed fresh out of my mind when I was watching it is, number one, this whole first part of the two-parter is one long goodbye. It's not one goodbye. It's multiple goodbyes, one after another. It's characters coming into the show, talking to each other, continuing those relationship threads that started all the way back in season 1 and have flowed all through season 2, and are starting to culminate in this two-part finale. We'll see the ultimate result of it in the second part, which I'll talk about in a separate video. But in this one, you're seeing all the pieces come together. So all those threads that the producers and the writers and the actors have been growing over the first season and a half, first 2 seasons, it's all coming together into this episode. And as a game master and as a group of players, you can do this in your games too. You just have to be willing to go along for the ride and be willing to share the spotlight. Remember that you're in a ensemble cast, and everyone's going to have their moment to shine. This episode is a great example. Everybody had something to do. Everybody had something to contribute to the overall story. And then you see that continuing into the second part. So, even though Discovery as an entity, as a complete series, the primary focus is on Michael Burnham, every supporting character's got stuff to do, and boy, this second season had a lot of supporting characters, not the least of which is because they brought Pike, Una, and Spock in as 3 whole new supporting characters, blop right into the story with everybody else that was already there. Plus, you got a whole bunch of supporting characters. So yeah, those supporting characters, really think about as a game master, think about adding supporting characters to your game, and really encourage your players to get into it. And then players, this is an opportunity for you. As you're working through your character life path, if you're using character life path, you might be using creation and play. But as you're thinking about your character, as you're building them in the life path, don't be afraid to start dropping in these little plot hooks, these little plot seeds, little potential NPCs that you can drop into your character history or your background, that your game master then could pull on and bring into the story somewhere, either as a one-off character or as a recurring character even, just to add nuance and detail. I think if my perspective as a game master is, if my player is going to make the time and effort to develop some sort of history, whether it's a half a page or some bullet points or even a full-blown short story, or even a captain's log or something for their character if they want to, if my players are going to go through the effort to build out a history, to build out some story, and to start dropping these plot hooks into there, like, different NPCs, different situations, different historical events that happen to the character. Like, I feel obligated to honor the work that they put into it and say, hey, you know what, player, you wrote this wonderful history for your character, and you put 3 really cool NPCs in there. You got an academy rival, a different civilization's person who's opposed to you for some reason or another, and then a family member or a friend or some childhood friend or something who's got issues, or the two of you have issues together, and why wouldn't I throw that at you to create some additional drama and a wonderful subplot for you to deal with, right? So players, this is an opportunity for you to have some agency, right? You're not just in the game reacting to everything that the game master throws at you. You have the opportunities to plant your own seeds and see what happens with them, and then encourage your game master, if they're not doing it, encourage them, look, I put this stuff into my history, please make use of it. Find ways to add that texture and detail into the game. And fellow players, like, if you guys are sharing your stories with each other, which hopefully you are, but maybe you're sharing stories in character, like around the table at 10 forward or something, and you're talking about your collective back history, or you're talking about your individual stories. As players, talk to the game master and say, hey, I remember, Laura said that her character had an old academy flame and it didn't work out, but they're like, Laura's character is still holding a candle for them. Like, wouldn't it be so cool if that character came onto the ship for some reason, or if we encountered that character for some reason? What kind of interesting drama or interplay would happen if we did that? And the game master could maybe think, oh yeah, I can find a way to fold that in to some episode somewhere, and make it happen. And so this, in some cases, this may kind of like sound a little bit soap opera-ish, but honestly, like, an ongoing RPG, by and large, is often a serialized story anyway, right? Because it's a consistent group of players, and you're doing episodes, session after session, and it probably, I'm willing to bet, the vast majority of them probably feel very DS9-ish, very Discovery-ish, where you're doing discrete stories, episode to episode to episode, but there's a lot of through line. There's a lot of hooks. Like, unlike maybe like the original series, where you have discrete episodes and it's the same characters, but there's not really any very minimal thread work going on between episodes. Of course, because they were airing it, they didn't know what order they would air them in necessarily. And then once they hit syndication, of course, they were run in whatever order the syndicated channels wanted to run them in, right? So there was necessarily no rhyme or reason to what order you watch them in. TNG to some extent had that too in the first few seasons, and then they got a little bit more serialized, like where you actually occasionally saw events from one episode would impact another episode, but it wasn't consistent, again, because they were in syndication. They couldn't always control what order the episodes were released in or were replayed in. But now with, DS9 really took a huge leap in the 90s to really intentionally do serialized storytelling, and I think they were ahead of the game in a lot of ways in that respect. Because I think DS9, like, if it landed now, it would fit right into the whole streaming universe of binge watching or serialized storytelling, which, like what you're seeing on Strange New Worlds and even Discovery, and even Picard too, I'd say. Anyway, so all that being said, all these plot hooks and all these plot threads, the players have the agency to add that stuff, and of course the game master, you've got the agency to do it too. I mean, it's partly it's as much your campaign as it is your player's campaign. So take advantage of supporting characters when you can. And I tell you, this episode had a lot of supporting characters, right? We'll talk about this in a second. So you got Pike, you got Una, you've got Admiral Cornwall, you got Giorgio, you've got all these characters. Oh, there's the Enterprise. Who else we got in here? Stamets and Culber have their moment. We're talking about relationships. We'll talk about in a moment. Queen Poe makes an appearance, a very meaningful appearance. So all those plot seeds that they planted way back in that short trek. And this is a game master tool and even a player tool, where if you are able to plant seeds for something way the heck earlier in your campaign, or even in like a subplot session or something, this is how you can pull it right back into the action and say, hey, you remember that character that you had fun with, that one little scene or that one little episode way back XYZ period? They're back here for a reason, and here's the reason, because they're super smart and they're super technical, and you need a technical solution, so guess what they got? They can help you. And then you get to have that whole nice little scene between Poe and Tilly, and to do some cool stuff there. Again, all the bridge crews here getting their moment to shine. Wish they had more to do, but at least they got something here, and they're all saying, "Hey, Burnham, we're going with you." So this is subplot city right here. This is relationship building. This is a very mature RPG right here. Like this group of players, Burnham and Tilly and Stamets and so forth, like they've been playing together for a while. And this is a great subplot moment. Like there's no mechanics here, there's no dice rolling in this scene. It's just characters interacting with each other, having a moment. The game master, probably threw the situation out and said, okay, here's where everything's coming to a head. Burnham's the one who's got to wear the suit because she's connected to it, via the DNA of her mom, and she's going to have to go lead the Discovery into the future so that Control can't get the sphere data and become super uber powerful and evil, and she's got to go alone because that's her deal. But then all these characters, all these players were like, okay, hold on, what's happening? So now they're getting into the meta, maybe, right? So where the game master has laid this out, maybe this is the season finale, maybe this is even potentially the series finale. Like I don't know how the game master might have talked it up heading into this 2-part episode, if it was at the game table. But maybe if I harken back to my ancient past, this could be the group of college friends saying, oh, semester's almost over, we're about to go our separate ways for the summer or for the fall or whatever. This is our last chance to get together in game. We're all going to break up and split up and get scattered to the four winds, but we're going to do one more big episode. And Burnham's going to be the primary character here. Of course, she's going to go far into the future. What a cool ending this would be! Like if Burnham goes off into the future, and we just end the series on that note. That'd be kind of interesting. We've saved the galaxy because we've sent the Discovery far into the future, and we're done. But then maybe there's been like email conversation, and there's like they're talking on Discord or whatever they're using now, Instagram, chit chat. I don't know. I'm Gen X. I don't know all the modern stuff. But anyway, so the players are talking to each other, and they say, "Hey, how about maybe we throw the game master a curveball, and in this scene, like we're having the scene now." And Burnham says, "Oh, hey y'all, I'm gonna go do this thing by myself. I just said goodbye to my boy, Ash, and now I'm gonna go off alone." And they're like, "No, dog, we're going with you." and Burnham's like, or the player, Burnham's player's like, "Wait a minute, why are you all coming with me?" And maybe a couple of the players have figured out, hey, maybe this is like a backdoor to continuing the series after we all come back for the next semester or something, right? Maybe to say, maybe it's not over. We're gonna give the game master a little nudge here and say, game master, we're actually gonna go with her, and we're gonna help her out and try to get her to the finish line here. And then we're all gonna go to the future together and see what happens. And then the game master hopefully is a yes and type of person, and will say, yeah, okay, let's go with it. And so you're all gonna help. And then Burnham has her little emotional moment, and everybody has their emotional moment, and then they get back to work. I got distracted. I was talking about supporting characters. So I think supporting characters. I think I've hammered that one on the head plenty of times. So now we're getting into some more subplot stuff. Again, no task rolling here, no mechanics, no dice hitting the table. This is all juicy role playing and subplot stuff. This is the game master telling the players, okay, yes, and you've all decided you want to go to the future with Burnham. What happens next? Well, this is probably a good opportunity because Control's on the way, right? The control ships are on the way to try to stop you. Enterprise is gearing up for battle. Discovery's gearing up for battle. Control's on the way, a couple hours, whatever it was. So this might be your only opportunity to say goodbye to everybody in your life who matters to you, who isn't on the ship, that you are never ever going to see again. And then the game, if it was me, because I've done this in a couple episodes, I've had similar situations. I mean, not exactly similar, but like the big goodbye. Like I was telling you, this whole episode is one big goodbye. Or actually, it's multiple goodbyes, all in totality of a big goodbye. But so okay, so the game, all the players say, okay, hey, we're gonna go to Burnham. We're all gonna go to the future. Hooray! and the game master could say, yeah, okay, yes, you're all going to go together, and control is 3 hours away. Maybe the game master spent a little bit of threat there to help set things up to say, okay, control is 3 hours away or 2 hours away, or it's imminent, right? This whole big, everything is building up to that moment, that big battle that we're going to see in the next episode that we'll talk about later. So here's some juicy subplot opportunities to say, okay, characters, or okay, players, each of you have an opportunity to say goodbye to the people that you love or care about, or that your character cares about, because you are believing you are never going to see them again. So what do you do, Tilly? And then the game master, if I was the game master, I would just go around the table and say, okay, spotlight's on you. Give us your moment. And maybe I would give them a couple minutes to prepare. Maybe I would jump to a play, like if one player wasn't quite ready, or maybe another player is not really good at thinking on their feet and needs a couple seconds to process. That's totally cool. I would probably, by this point, 2 seasons in, I would probably know my players pretty well and their tendencies and what can I expect from them in terms of, like, when I give them an opportunity in the spotlight, will they rise to the occasion immediately, or do they need a little bit of time to warm up to it? I would have a pretty good gauge of that, hopefully. And hopefully you do too, if you're a game master. If not, that's a skill that you can work on. Active listening, listening more than talking, that kind of stuff. It's all, soft skills, but super useful in life and also at the game table. So lesson learned for you. Anyway, so I would go around the table and say, okay, Tilly, you got 5 minutes, whatever you need. What do you say? Who do you say it to? Like, who are you talking to? Who are you writing a letter to? Or who are you doing a voice message to? And just, in character, give us a couple of minutes. And you do that, great. You have that awesome little moment. And hopefully, like, if I'm a player at that table, I would be enraptured listening for everybody, because I'm invested in everybody's characters. I want to know what's going on. Who are they talking to? What are they going to do? So we get Tilly, and then we get Owo says goodbye to her people, and then Detmer says goodbye to her people, and everybody says goodbye to everybody else's people, and then we got this whole next goodbye. So everyone does that emotional thing, and it's like, and then okay, here's Pike. He's probably, I don't know, maybe he's a supporting character, or he's somebody's friend who came in to play a few episodes of Star Trek, had a lot of fun, and he's ready to go off to his own, maybe he's leaving for the semester or something, or, moving on. But even him, right? Even the player playing Pike is getting a backdoor too, right? Because like maybe he heard all the great things about season 1 from his friends. He's like, oh shoot, I want to play Star Trek. What can I do? Can I play a captain? And the game master was like, yeah, why don't you play the captain of the Enterprise before Kirk? Why don't you be Pike? And the player would be like, oh, hell yeah, let's do that. And who's my first officer? And who's my science officer? And the game master, probably getting creative, says, oh, your science officer is, Lieutenant Spock. And, oh, by the way, Spock is Burnham's half-brother. And the Burnham player is like, what the fuck? Excuse me. Anyway, so Pike is like, he's got to say his goodbyes, too. He's got to say goodbye to the Discovery crew that he's been hanging out with for the whole season. And maybe the other players don't realize that he's got to deal with the GM to play the next campaign. He's going to go off and do Strange New Worlds, or maybe even the players are ready to do a switch here, right? Maybe they're ready to take a break from Discovery, and they want to go play new characters on the Enterprise, right? Maybe this is the end of this campaign and the start of a new campaign. Segueing off of this one, right? We've seen that certainly, where you get spin-offs and crossovers and all that stuff. So, this could be, this whole season could have been, well, maybe not, the whole season wasn't a setup for Strange New Worlds, but as it matured, right, and we get to the season finale, this is kind of a way for them to wink and nod and say, oh, this is coming to an end, but not really, because we'll be continuing Star Trek, the game as a group, but with different characters on a different ship, and we'll still be getting together and all that stuff. And then at some point we'll come back and we'll do the story of our Discovery characters in the future, but that's getting ahead of ourselves right now. So anyway, Pike does his goodbyes. We got Commander Non also doing her goodbyes, right? Because maybe this is a bit character, maybe this is a casual player who's come in, or maybe this is actually a supporting character who's someone else is playing, and was like, this Non character has been a cool supporting character. I'll play Non for a little while. And you know what? She decided she's going to stay too. She doesn't want to stay in the 23rd century. She wants to go off to the far future as well. She's a security officer. And of course, we see, Nan in the second half of the episode gets connected with Giorgio, and then they go off and beat up on in Leland, or get beat up upon by Leland, and then they beat up Leland. And they actually add a little texture to her, some interesting texture to her, which we'll talk about in a different episode. But so Nan, again, another supporting character, makes a big appearance here. Giorgio. This is kind of fun. I have to think that Giorgio. Maybe a supporting character, maybe a player playing like a bit role or something. Here she is being clever, like as Pike is about to beam off the ship and head over to the Enterprise for good. She's like, oh, and by the way, I'm a Terran, he, and he's like, yeah, I know. And he gives her the wink, and then he beams away. And it's like, so those two players might have had some interplay between each other over the course of the season, or maybe they're just like, they're friends away from the table or something, and somehow Pike figured it out, right? And that, whether that was an opposed role somewhere along the way, or maybe a task to figure it out, I don't know, or maybe good old Pike just aced on a what do you think, like a insight plus security or insight plus command type of task to kind of suss out who Giorgio is. I don't know that I would leave that to a task roll. I would probably want that to come out in role playing, or maybe Pike, being the perceptive dude that he is, maybe he just kind of figured it out by rolling a dice. Maybe Giorgio at some point along the way had a I know it was probably an opposed role. Now that I think about it, she's probably using like her subterfuge and her sneaky, like daring plus security, or yeah, something like that to cover up the fact, to hide the fact who she is. Because for a while there, she was playing it being the real Giorgio, the prime Giorgio, but just like undercover. And Pike probably sussed that out. Did an opposed role, got some successes, or maybe threw in a determination if he really needed to, but probably got some successes in there and called it good. So he gives her the wink and the nod and moves on. And he goes to the Enterprise. He's on the Enterprise. He's getting ready for battle. He's strapping in. Acting Captain Saru's on the Discovery. They're strapping in. They're getting ready for the big fight. And we cut the action right there. And the GM says, "Okay, we're done." So yeah, great episode. A lot of subplots. A little bit of dice rolling along the way. Probably a few low-level tasks and challenges along the way. Just to get some momentum going. Oops, that actually changes the size of the picture. Sorry about that. I'm kind of screwing with this while I'm doing it. I shouldn't do that. All right, anyway. So let's go back just a little bit. So, talking about supporting characters who make an appearance, of course, family, right here. Burnham's family is still alive. She's got Spock, she's got Sarek, and she's got Amanda. And we've seen Sarek and Amanda quite a bit in the first two seasons. Why not bring them in? This is it. This is the big farewell. Burnham's leaving. She's going to be gone forever. And this is their last opportunities to see their adopted daughter. And so they brought Sarek in, they brought Amanda in. They have a really nice little scene. Sarek does this kind of like awkward Vulcan, do I hug them, do I not hug them kind of weird thing at the very end, which is super cool because James Frain is an amazing actor, and it was so fun to watch him as Sarek. And I don't think we're going to see him on Strange New Worlds. I wish we would. I mean, we've seen Amanda, but I'd love to see Sarek make an appearance on Strange New Worlds. But I think canonically, I don't think Spock sees him again until that episode in the original series. Not sure, I don't remember the name of the title. But when Mark Leonard makes the appearance on the original series as Sarek, as opposed to the Romulan commander. Anyway, so here's an opportunity for a task right here. This is probably an extended task for Poe and Tilly and some of the other characters to build this MacGuffin to magically charge the crystal to make it happen. So this is mostly subplot city here, but there's an opportunity here to roll some dice and to get some momentum if you're competent at it. So there's Poe. We got some role-playing stuff here. Another big role-playing scene. Again, lots of role-playing opportunities in this episode. The players of Culber and Stamets, they've probably come to this episode through all the trials and tribulations that these two characters have had in the first two seasons. With Culber getting killed by Ash and then coming back and Rip Paul saving him, and now they're having this whole awkward goodbye in the engine room. And this scene is like, if I'm a player, I am on the edge of my seat at the table with my friends, watching this scene play out, like, because knowing the back history of these two characters, having seen them develop over the first two seasons, having that emotional moment when Culber gets killed, but then comes back in the in the mycelial network, and then coming to here, and it's like, oh, they're going separate ways. What's going to happen? A really good, awkward, emotional, very real human scene here. So really good stuff here. And again, this harkens to that soap opera feel that I was talking about earlier, where, like, really good, in my experience, really good Star Trek sessions at the table, whether it's Star Trek Adventures or some other game system that I've played. Like, these are the scenes that I really, really, really latched onto as a player, and these are the scenes that, as a game master, I loved to present opportunities for players. Because by this point, 2 seasons in, the players are invested, the characters are invested. They're doing these scenes pretty much on their own, right? It's like, okay, maybe the player of Stamets and the player of Culber said, hey, we're gearing up to do this big goodbye. I think we need a scene in the engine room where we meet and we actually try to talk through this. And then boom, they do it. 5-6 minutes. Every player at the table is like, oh, what's going to happen? We're listening. We're totally focused on these guys. We know we'll get our opportunity later, but right now we're totally focused on these two. Really great stuff. It's magic if you can make it happen at your game table, I swear. And stick with it if it's not there yet. This is a little dream sequence kind of thing that is always fun to throw at players as a game master. Sometimes I use note cards, and I give a note card to a player and say, hey, here's a little dream sequence you just experienced. Do you want to describe that to the other players? Or I'll just narrate this. This would just be narrative, because there's really no dice rolling here. It's just Burnham experiencing what could happen in the future, because she's touching the crystal. She's seeing everybody get whacked by Control. Hats off to Trek Core for this screenshot of Saru getting the phaser blast in the chest here. You're seeing the glow. Blah! Oh man, so much great stuff going on here. Anyway, some explosions and some debris, standard fare for Star Trek. There's the wrecked Discovery bridge here as we're getting through the fight, and then of course the clean, pristine Enterprise bridge. So pretty. The orange decoration there. Oh gosh, so gorgeous. Gorgeous set. Oh, so fun. You got Jerzo, you got Cornwall, you got Una. Different hairstyle there. Pike looking stony in his uniform. And here's the last thing I wanted to mention. We're right on half an hour here, so I want to call this good. I think I've rambled long enough. But Star Trek Adventures, you have an opportunity. There's a talent called, I think, personal effects or personal possessions or something like that. You don't necessarily need the talent to do it, but hey, if you get that talent and you're wondering why it's important, why would anybody care? Here it is. This is a touchstone for this character. Very important touchstone. That is Sarana's knife. That is very important to Saru, and this ties into the whole goodbye thing. Like he's potentially saying goodbye to Burnham. I think this is before he decides to go with her. And so, he's going into this dramatic situation. This thing brings him comfort because it reminds him of his sister. It reminds him of home. And even interestingly, this ties into the next episode because we actually bring in Sarana as another supporting character who makes an appearance at the 11th hour, which is a little Deus Ex Machina, but that's okay. We'll let it go. It's the series finale, potentially. It's the season finale. Why not pull out all the stops, bring everybody back, and see what you can do with it. But because this knife had a lot of meaning, we've seen this knife in a couple of previous episodes, especially the big one where Saru's about to go through Vaharai and thinks he's supposed to ritually cut off those ganglia, but then things happen and that's not actually the point. But this knife is important to him, and so him having the Saru player getting to do a whole scene, finally getting to use that talent again, because he probably hasn't had a chance to use that talent all that often in the show. He's like, oh, I'm saying goodbye. I want my knife. And if this player's like me, I probably have a prop of this knife on hand at the table with me to say, like, this is my thing. This is my character's thing. I've done that before for a couple of campaigns for Star Trek, where if my player or if my character has a particular object, a particular thing that's meaningful to them, then I would, as a player, to help my verisimilitude and my role playing as a touchstone. I'm such a method actor. I have that thing with me, so I can actually focus on that, and it's a thing, and I can play my character more effectively. Do it. Don't be shy. Don't feel like you're feeling foolish. Like, just go for it. Have fun with it. And if your players give you grief about it, then find a different group of players. If they're not going to have fun with it with you, encourage them to get some cool swag and some cool props at the table too, and then just go for it, right? Anyway, so the Saru player here probably had that knife handy at the table, or probably always has it, and always in the hope that maybe that talent will make an appearance or have a role to play. And then the game master was like, "Okay, well, I'm going to give you an opportunity. Here you go, throwing you the softball. It's a big goodbye episode, so big subplot heavy episode. What are you going to do with it?" and the player is like, "Oh, I get to finally bring my knife out, yay!" And then he brings out the knife, and you're off and running. So. Anyway, all that being said, there is so much to mine in this particular episode, specifically for an RPG. So, like, even if you don't like the characters, even if you don't like Discovery, I shouldn't have to say this, but pinch your nose, watch it anyway, and see how the characters interplay with each other. See how all these subplot threads that have been happening in the first 2 seasons all come together in this episode, and then get extended into the second half of the episode, which we'll talk about at a future date. Because I need to go rewatch it again. I mean, I literally just rewatched it a couple days ago, but now I want it fresh in my memory before I do this again. So I got it in my head. I don't have a script or anything. I'm just doing this off the dome. Just off of what I remember, and also having the great screenshots from TrekCore. Thank you, TrekCore. Anyway, so subplots. Always try to use subplots. Use supporting characters. Use touchstones for your characters, and don't be afraid to have a whole session where your dice don't spend a lot of time hitting the table, right? You don't. Especially for Star Trek, I mean, not other games necessarily, but especially for Star Trek, you don't always have to have dice hitting the table. Now, I know that'll be anathema to some of you who are really into the games for dice rolling, and that's totally cool. I think the game master of this episode had lots of opportunities for difficulty 1, difficulty 0 tasks to give those players, like some of the players, like probably like Reno and Detmer, I feel like are players who probably want to roll a lot of dice. Right, Detmer's the pilot. She likes to fly the ship. She likes to do the donuts in space. She likes to be the zippy zappy flying thing. She probably likes to roll a lot of dice, right? And that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. She's like, give me an opportunity to fly the ship and let me roll some dice. Let me do some tasks. Let me do some cool stuff with my talents. And then Reno, of course, the engineer, the Miss or Ms. Fix-It, always got her hands dirty. Always got something going on. Always with the quick retort or the quick whip, the quick wit. She probably likes to roll a lot of dice, or they like to roll a lot of dice too. Nothing wrong with that at all. Anyway, so there's other ones too probably. So anyway, I'm at 37 minutes. I'm going to call this good. Hopefully I've hit the points I've wanted to hit. Any questions on any of this, drop one down in the comments. If you like this content, let me know. I'm going to be doing more of this, pretty much just off the cuff, no particular order. I watch a lot of Star Trek, obviously, not just because I'm the project manager of these 2 games, but also just because I love the franchise, and I'm always filling my brain with more story. And it's a comfort thing. I'll be honest. Star Trek has been a comfort for decades now. And when life sucks, I'll put on an episode or 2 of Star Trek just to live in a different universe for a little while. And that universe is one I enjoy role playing in and game mastering in. And hopefully you do too, because like all that passion that I have for this franchise, it's going right back into the products that you all get to enjoy. And so I'm really enjoying doing this kind of an episode where we kind of pick apart the episode, but not from like a review standpoint or for like, Sonequa Martin Green was doing a great job acting here and blah, 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 because like those episodes, there's other channels that do that stuff way better than I ever would. But like from a gaming perspective, from a Star Trek Adventures gaming perspective, I think there's a lot of great stuff here that you can you can tease out and apply to your own games and make your own games richer, more engaging, more interesting, more fun. Get your players more involved, get your game master more involved with you. Have fun more than anything else. I mean, it is a game, so have fun. Get into it, enjoy it. I hope this has been useful. Like and subscribe if you want to. Drop a comment down below, and I will see you all next time. Thanks so much.